The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 24th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
On the first day of the week at early dawn, the women came to the tomb taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Alleluia, Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed. Hallelujah.
A pastor I worked with in California was a professor of religion before she was ordained. In a recent conversation, she brought up a relatively obscure religious tradition, Zoroastrianism. Has anybody ever heard of this? Yeah, Stacey's very excited. It's been around for thousands of years. It survives into this day, but has a small number of adherents who are mostly in the Middle East or in India. You might be asking yourself, why is Pastor Becca talking about this random religion that's not Christianity on Easter Sunday? There is a point. The thing is, Zoroastrians believe that there are 2 competing forces in the world, a force of life and a force of death. And this duality gets expressed in lots of different ways. It's not so different than what other religions believe and teach, but there is one aspect that I find especially interesting. Zoroastrians do not claim to know what will win. In other words, the battle between life and death continues on, and it is full of suspense. This is not the action story or the classic tale where the good guy always wins and the plans of the wicked are foiled. For these believers, the struggle is real and it could go either way. Life or death could win. It's a 50-50 bet. And every day it could be lived with the anxiety of not knowing. All too often, we live this way. Like we're not sure what will happen. Like we are not sure if life or death, good or evil, will become triumphant. I mean, I fall into this trap from time to time. We watch the news worriedly, like the death, violence, cruelty, and greed reported on is all that there is. We wring our hands about the state of public Christianity, as if our witness is not most powerful when it is lived out in our everyday lives. We stress about whether or not we are good enough at our jobs or for our family or for God, and we have trouble remembering that God has already called us good. We see this battle in so many aspects of our lives, life versus death, good versus evil. We live in anxious anticipation of what might win. But today we get to hear the end of the story. That God wins, that life wins. Death tried incredibly hard. Death and the forces of sin were out in full strength. God came to live among a broken humanity, and we could not handle how loving and full of grace and compassion and welcome this God was. And so sin worked overtime in us to put this God that we rejected to death. And sin thought that it had won death, thought that it had won, but we know what happened. At early dawn, a group of women came to the tomb expecting to find the body of their teacher, their Lord, and their friend. We know what happened. The tomb was empty, and the women remembered all that Jesus had said about dying and rising again. We know what happened. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women became the first evangelists, the first to proclaim the good news that Jesus the Christ had risen from the dead. We know what happened. Most of the disciples did not believe them, calling it an idle tale. But Peter did, and ran to the tomb to see it for himself. We know what happened. The story of Christ's resurrection from the dead spread, and the message of Christianity, of God's love for all of humanity, made its way to every corner of the world. This is what happened. We know the end of the story. None of this is to say that there will never be any suffering or pain or even death. Our world is filled with things that scare us, things that seek to hurt us and separate us from God. We continue to hurt each other, erecting barriers between us based on flawed ideologies and unjust beliefs. We take advantage of one another and of the creation God has given us. We look out for ourselves, for our own wealth, for our own power, for our own security and safety at the expense of our neighbors. Our vulnerabilities are weaponized against us. Our differences are lifted up as justification for mistreatment. We are dehumanized for the ways in which we do not exhibit some false ideal of physical or mental ability. Greed, oppression, injustice, the wielding of power over and against those most vulnerable, instead of using that power to support and protect. These are the forces at work in our world, in our communities, within our very selves. But this is not the end of the story. We know what is. Ultimately, we know that these forces have been destroyed by God. Ultimately, we know that they have been defeated, and that when the reign of God comes in its fullness, we will see the truth revealed. This is the already not yet lens that we experience our faith through, knowing and trusting that God has defeated the powers of sin and death, and yet only catching glimpses of that right now. We know that our differences are what make us strong. We know that all people are deserving of dignity and respect and the chance for a joyous life, regardless of their disability or perceived deficiency. We know that God's love is for all of humanity, all races, all genders, all nationalities, all people. We know that God's promises hold fast when the rest of our world feels shaken at the foundations. This knowledge is best expressed through a story that I heard from another pastor colleague. He was at a nursing home on Friday, leading a Good Friday service in the chapel there for its residents. Just before the service began, a woman called him over to her chair. She told him that most of the time she lived in a low-care facility. She was pretty independent, but that recent circumstances meant she had to be moved into the nursing home. Then she told him that she was scared. "I'm scared to death," she said. Just scared to death. He asked her what she was scared of, and while she did not mince words, I'm going to edit a little bit. She said, "I'm scared of this sickness. It's a bear. It's a freaking bear." But she didn't stop there. She declared how scared she was of this sickness, but then she went on and said, "But even if it gets me, God wins. Even if it gets me, God wins." She knew the end of the story. And today, even if we feel like the forces of sin are all that there is in the world, even if we look around and feel that our zeal for justice and truth is waning, even if we can't see what's coming next or understand how we got here in the first place, hope and faith in God holds us fast. We know the end of the story. We proclaim it here every Sunday. In the Thanksgiving for baptism, we proclaim that God has provided life-giving water since the beginning of time. The readings remind us of all the ways God has already acted in human history. In the Nicene Creed, we end by saying, we look for the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. In communion, we are welcomed to a table of bread and wine, the body and blood of Christ, that sustains us in this life and keeps us in God's grace. And when we leave ready to share the good news of God's victory to all who will listen, because we know the end of the story. Alleluia, Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed. Hallelujah.